Massive result for Andy Burnham. I think Andy Burnham personally, rather than Labour, 54.8%, an outright majority victory. That's very unusual in parliamentary elections. It's also noticeable the absolute collapse of the Conservatives, the Greens, and the Liberal Democrats. If we scroll down, we can see the vote changes versus the 2024 general election. So Labour up 9.6%, collapse for the Conservatives, collapse for the Liberal Democrats, collapse for the Greens. Reform have actually improved. They've got a higher share of the vote. Restore Britain also appear in this election as well. If we look back at the raw vote totals, we can see 24,000, almost 25,000 for Andy Burnham, just in the hundreds for Conservatives, Greens, and Lib Dem. If you add all of those together, you get 26,405 votes for those four parties. This is the UK Parliament website. Here we've got the same, the parliamentary election for Makerfield 2 years ago. We can see this was also a win and slightly different vote totals. So 18,000 for Labour. That's roughly 7,000 less, but much higher totals for the Conservatives, the Liberal Democrats, and the Greens. If you add those four parties together, Labour, the Conservatives, Liberal Democrats, and Greens, you get 27,092 votes. So what has changed in the constituency of Makerfield? We've got roughly 27,000 people voting for, quote unquote, the Uniparty, and they've shifted their allegiances around so that in 2 years, Labour still wins, but wins much better. Uniting, the Uniparty are uniting in order to beat reform. So Robert Kenyon, 2024, 12,803 votes. If we compare that to this year, 2026, what we can see is that Reform UK got 15,000 votes. So Reform UK increased their share of the vote, increased their absolute number of votes as well. As well as that, Restore Britain appear on 6.8% with just over 3,000 votes. So we've got the traditional Uniparty, Labour, Conservative, Greens, Lib Dems. They just swapped around their votes. And separately, we've got an increase in the right-wing non-establishment vote as well. I'll come back to Andy Burnham later and first of all discuss reform. So there are some queries, I guess, around reform's position. So like I say, they did increase their vote share, they increased their absolute number of votes, but why aren't they breaking through? So they've got The Guardian here. Reform's genius plan finally coming into view, field terrible candidates and then lose. They do seem to be stalling somewhat. So in the national polls, they were around 30%. Now they're kind of hovering very much in the mid 20s, 24, 25, 26, something like that. In terms of by-election performance, so Makerfield has been the third general election, the third by-election since the 2024 general election. They won in Runcorn by just 6 votes. So they absolutely squeaked through in Runcorn, just a 6-vote margin. So that was technically a win. And the next one was Gordon and Denton. They had to settle for second best, as the headline says. They were quite far behind. I think it was several thousand votes in Gordon and Denton that they lost by. So while the data in Makerfield was technically good for them, they do seem to be having problems. I think, for example, they're being dragged to the right certainly in terms of what they're saying. I mean, there's been tweets, like I saw, for example, Zia Yusuf seems to be tweeting about immigration much more. They appear to be using Rupert Lowe's much more simple, direct language. So I think the Makerfield by-election for reform, it's kind of a bit swings and roundabouts. They're not really setting the agenda, but they're technically not falling behind either. But let's talk about Andy Burnham. So here we are in the Sun, U-turn for Burn. Andy Burnham U-turns on 10 billion WASPy payout after backlash for over spending spree fears. So the WASPy women, they're basically complaining about the level of pension that they're getting. So I believe it's something to do with the equalisation of the retirement age between men and women, and they lost out some money, and they've been complaining that they were treated badly, and the courts have basically told them to go away. Andy Burnham said, yes, I'll pay them the money. Then he suddenly has to turn around and say, actually, no, I won't give you the money. So a very Keir Starmer kind of U-turn by Andy Burnham there. So Andy Burnham, he's a Brownite, he's a Blairite, he's a Corbynite. He basically says whatever he needs to in the moment, seeking to calm the markets by committing to fiscal rules. Whatever the fiscal rules are, Andy doesn't seem to know, but he's agreeing that the financial constraints that Keir Starmer's government works under, Andy will work under as well. So nothing is going to change in terms of finances. And if nothing can change in terms of finances, nothing can change. So what's the point? I mean, he's got a nice northern accent. He's not a robot like Keir Starmer, but otherwise, I don't think Andy's the guy. And other people agree that Andy's not really the guy as well. So he has a massive win in Makerfield in terms of voting. But nationally, according to YouGov, the pollster, Andy Burnham has become less popular ahead of the Makerfield by-election. So if we scroll down, we can see, here's the graph. The number of Britons with a negative opinion of Andy Burnham have increased significantly since May. So the purple line here, favourable, it's trending down. And the unfavourable line is going up. So while he's had a massive success, and congratulations to him for that, people nationally have seen him and they don't really like him. And that's only going to get worse, I think, once he actually gets to Westminster. I guess the other story worth talking about is Restore. So they made it into third place with 6.8% of the vote. So here in The Spectator, why Restore were humiliated in Makerfield. Brendan O'Neill seems to have a bit of a problem with them. Not exactly clear why. He seems quite sort of angry. Finally, we have an answer to the question. How popular is Rupert Lowe's party Restore? The answer is less popular than the BNP. Despite swarming Makerfield with Aggie, is that aggressive? Maybe canvassers barking, Nigel Farage is controlled opposition. The party won just 6.8% of the vote. Back in the 2010 general election, the oafish BNP got 7.4% in Makerfield. Oh dear, taxi for Rupert. Back to your cushy pad down south, sir. So the BNP, so 7.4%. So this is the yardstick. Let's have a look at some other parties and see how long it took to get them 7.4%. So here we are on Wikipedia, History of the British National Party. The British National Party is a far-right political party in the United Kingdom formed as a splinter group from the National Front in 1982. So the party began in 1982, and in 2010, so that's 28 years later, they got about 7% of the vote in Makerfield. So it took them 28 years to make that much progress. And here again on Wikipedia, we have the electoral history of Nigel Farage. How long did it take him to get to 6.8%? If we scroll down, we get to his elections. His first by-election was in 1994. He gets 1.7%. And then in the 2001 general election, he got 7.8%. So it took him 7 years. So it took the British National Party 28 years. It took Nigel Farage 7 years. And Restore, here we are on Restore Britain's Wikipedia page. So Restore Britain, right-wing to far-right political party led by Rupert Lowe. The organisation was officially launched as a pressure group June 2025, as a political party 13th of February 2026. So March, April, May, June. It took Restore Britain 4 months to do what took Nigel Farage 7 years. It took Restore Britain 4 months what took the BNP 28 years. So I would say Restore are now a viable option in British politics. So yeah, the Makerfield by-election, a little bit strange, kind of distorted results due to the Andy Burnham factor, but still, it's going to have a massive effect because, let's be honest, Keir Starmer is toast. Perhaps by the time you're watching this video, Andy will already be Prime Minister. Thanks for watching.